Because on Grayscale Gorilla, which is gonna be right here, I did a partial video that I think does explain how I made part of that, and that's gonna be this video, the interaction tag. The thing is like you'll see that I already had this mouth made, and I already had all the poses made. So like I already had this entire rig of like controls. So, but then if you're talking about like the actual espresso and creating of the interaction tag to the point where, like, as I get to the end here, you see I can just visually grab and start dragging. The my double voice going on there. Like really quickly, I'm like able to drag this around and create mouth shapes and get some motion going by keyframing things super quickly. So the interact takes forever to set up, but the interaction tag is pretty cool there. Like if you were a TD, like a technical director kind of guy, and you were building the super advanced rig for your artist to use, it's great. So like that all turned out really well there too. I was just making that up too. Like it looks like it's moving, but I was just grabbing it. And look at all those keyframes moving around. Like it looks like it's insane, and it came together so quick. And I was even like building in some overlap and trying to curve things around and whatnot. The building, but anyway, right away you can see like look at the mesh. You look at the mesh right there of the mouth. Like it's already a cleanly modeled out mesh, and I actually made that like 10 years ago. It was just something I happened to have. Um, so I don't even like if we were to even talk about it now, it'd have to be like a crazy like super short version. I guess maybe we can talk about some of the general principles of it. I'm not going to get into the interaction tag, but anyway, I learned this technique from a book called what is it? Facial animation. Um, I can't remember. Oh, it's called Making Faces or Making. Oh, what's it called? It's from Jason Ospia. Stop Staring. Ha! I remembered close enough. So there's this really great book called Stop Staring. And what originally made me get this book was it was written by one of the guys who did some of the original facial animation and rigging for Reboot. And so I got the book, and he really breaks down like modeling a mesh in a way to have it ready for facial animation, and then talks a lot about these facial poses. So I highly recommend this book. It's detailed, it's dense, it takes a long time. But one of the techniques I took from that, um, so let's see, can we go to all? Yes, I totally want to recommend this. So I'm going to grab this link here, and I do recommend this book if you're interested in doing facial animation. Okay, having said that, there's a technique in there in which you do some of the modeling via splines, which I thought was pretty neat. So if I were to grab, in fact, why don't we even make this a linear spline? So it's going to be linear, just a circle spline. But what would happen is stuff like I would make this, and then maybe, can I get some nice cuts in here? It's going to be really, really loose. I'm just going to do these cuts, and it'd probably be a good idea to do those kind of clean, but I'll do them vertically. So it's like what you would grab these and you start grabbing points and moving them around, and like we would have a lot more of them. So this would be very, 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 very basic. But what you do is like take these points and model out your mouth. So I would grab these and like the mouth sinks back there, and there's a lot of volume to the mouth. Like people always put the mouth straight, but like if you actually look at the mouth, like there's a lot of depth. Things go forward and backward, and I don't know the proportion of the stuff off the top of my head. But it's like we would create this spline, and then we'd make a duplicate of the spline, and then we'd maybe just hit T for scale and scale the whole thing down just a little bit, and then start scaling this whole thing down a little bit. And then I'm going to make another copy of it and make it above it. And I'm going to take this one, I'm going to scale it up a little. I'm going to pull it back just a hair and maybe scale it widthwise a little bit. And then we grab the small one and we'd make another duplicate of it. I'm going to hit T for scale and shrink it down some more, shrink it down some more, and then pull it back a little bit. I'm going to make another duplicate of it. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to pull that all, I'm going to pull it deep into the mouth. And now that becomes that shape. And maybe even here I start like shrinking that a little flatter, and I'm gonna make another duplicate of it, and then that one I'm gonna T for scale, scale it up, scale it out, make another duplicate of it. I'm gonna take this one, pull it back, and I guess that should probably do it. So this becomes this crazy mesh. Now I was very careful about putting these in particular order. So now you can see I can make a loft, and I can. How many points do we have? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got 8 points. which means we're going to take all these guys, throw it into the loft, and set the loft to 9. So we're going to have it one higher than the number of points that we have. Now I'm going to actually grab this top spline and make one more. I'm going to duplicate that, copy it, scale it up, scale it way out, and that's going to become kind of the face. And now all we have to do is go to caps and say, I think start cap, none. Okay, so you see there's no start cap. So now there's just a hole. And now you see it's actually sweeping between all those meshes. And you see how very quick I was able to kind of throw all those together. So now we actually have a, not terrible mouth. And what's cool is we can actually grab all those splines at the same time. And I can grab, like, maybe this point. I'm not sure what object that's on. So let's go find it. It's this object. So I'm going to grab both of those points. And I would maybe grab them and pull them a little deeper back in there. You always get that little recess in the mouth like that. And there would be a lot more points and a lot more effort to making this clean and evening things out and whatnot. And now we can grab, whatever spline we need. Maybe that one. No, okay, it's this one. Like, at this point, maybe we want a little bit more forward. Like, maybe these lips are too deep, so I'll select all these points and pull a little more forward. Maybe grab these middle ones. And so, so this turns into, like, an infinite amount of time where you can be tweaking and cleaning a model. And now this becomes kind of the mesh for the mouth. So even when it comes to that big old face, if I grab this outermost spline, duplicate it one more time, scale it way out, and then maybe even here I would grab these 4 points, and then like when I was making that, I kind of squared this out, so now you get that kind of nice mouth with here. Now the best part about this is if I go to my mesh, you see it's actually very clean and even. If I go to my loft, in fact, and start dropping the number of subdivisions, we can actually see we have an incredibly clean, very controllable mesh here. So we've kind of really quickly just made a mouth. Not the correct number of points, not the correct number of anything, but we've kind of quickly made a mouth. And if you were making more of a face, what's kind of cool is once this is done, I mean, for this face, like let's say there's a, okay, most modeling comes from a cube. So if you're making a cube, you're starting out with a face with a cube, but you're working on that part of the mouth, then we'd make that, and let's say it's going to be fitting in right there. You would just make sure that your cube has the proper number of subdivisions to accommodate that. So we'd want maybe 2 of those. Let's go one more. We got that height going. That's actually not too bad. I'm going to make that editable. Let's grab these 2 middle ones, hit T for scale. I'm going to scale those maybe a little wider. Cool. So now, let's say, I'm going to save that and just say, mouth model. So now I'm going to go and make that editable, bake it down. In fact, you know what? I'm going to turn off my subdivisions per segment so those become as little polys as possible. Make that editable, weld all this together. I'm going to, in fact, connect all this into one object, connect and delete. Now I'm going to delete out these polygons, which you'll see it's the same number of points that my mouth has, so I can delete all those out. Could we bridge that? I don't think we could. But I'm going to use the polygon pen tool because it's super quick. ME is a shortcut. If I hold down, I'm on the edge mode. Hold down Command, I think? Command Control. And you can see I can just drag out these polys super duper duper easily, which is great. Link, 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 link. So the point being is like, okay, we just spent all the time and modeled that mouth out as a special piece of geometry, but we can then very quickly incorporate it into the section of a larger mesh if we're kind of careful about the way we think about it. So if we kind of blend these in a little bit, maybe not make it protrude quite so much. In fact, MG is iron, and if I just kind of drag that, it's going to try and put these points in the very soft locations, which when I'm doing this part of the work, this actually works pretty well. MG, smooth those out. Oop, I missed one. Always make sure you're doing these symmetrically, otherwise you can really break your symmetry. And these aren't even guaranteed to be symmetrical, but you can see we're getting a nice kind of transition there. And even there, like, this is just the beginning. If you had a really fancy face and you'd want to have these all connected really well, I'm going to fill my selection there. In fact, why don't we optimize our points? So everything's been welded together, and let's say this whole thing can be pulled backwards a little bit or just kind of placed correctly on the face. Anyway, like the point being is like that's how you can incorporate the mesh. I think my normals are inverted, so I'm going to select all, hit UR, and actually UR is reverse. UA is align normals, so now they're all the same, but they're all backwards. So now I hit UR for invert normals. So now you see that's all kind of lined up correctly, and we kind of got a face going. Awesome, straightforward, not too bad. So now the next part here is actually incredibly fun to do. The next part would be, it's time consuming but very fun, is adding our pose morph tag, which is under character tags, pose morph. And I haven't done this in a really long time, so bear with me if I screw something up. What do we want to record? We want to record points. So we've already got this applied to our object. It's all set up right here. In fact, we've already got a base pose, so we're working on this one. So I'm going to call this one smile. So all we have to do is manipulate, while we've got this tag selected in edit mode, all we have to do is draw the smile. So I'm going to grab the relevant points, which are going to be, I guess, these guys. I'm going to go to edges. Should be the easiest way of grabbing the selections I want to. I'm going to grab all those. And I guess I'm intersecting there a little bit. That's bugging me a little bit. I should probably fix that in the base mesh. But you know, I'm just going to grab these guys, and I'm going to pull it up a little bit. And then I'm going to grab this line as well. I'm going to pull that up. And then I'm going to grow my selection. I'm going to pull that up. And you see, I'm just grabbing kind of the relevant points. You got to be kind of careful and clean with the way you do this. If you just kind of arbitrarily grab points, you can really start messing things up. A good thing to do here is sometimes go to the front view and make sure you're grabbing all the points all the way through. So I think that's kind of the smiley bit of the mouth. But there's a good chance I went and I accidentally selected points in the back. I didn't, but you'd want to be careful about that. Also, I might have, you see I grabbed that inner mouth part, and I don't want to do that. But anyway, I've grabbed these, and I can pull those up higher. We're really losing it without grabbing this point. This entire thing will change, of course, if we have it in the subdivision surface. You actually see we're going to get these nice kind of smoothed out lips. And this is actually kind of what counts. So when I pull this up, you see that's actually kind of curving into what looks like a reasonably nice looking smile there. But if I turn off our subdivision surface, it looks ugly. You got to keep in mind that that is actually what counts. So you can see we got that pretty nice curve going there. So anyway, having done that, I can now turn this to animate mode, and now we've got a smile slider. So now I can grab the slider and pull it up and down. Now what's great about these sliders is I can actually drag this beyond 100%. So I can actually get this big old quirky smile, or if you do it kind of cleanly, I can drag it into negative territory. And if you don't do the mesh too well, it might work, it might not. Because I kind of grab these outer points, it's deforming in a weird way, but you see I actually kind of drag that down into a smile. Now you see there's actually some weird bulging there, but what's great is we can actually go back to edit mode, and I can fix this. I can fix what's making it look bad while it's in this deformed view, which is kind of amazing. You want to be careful about the way you do this, because you got to keep in mind it's going to be doing the inverse when we go the other way. But anyway, I can go back here, go back to animate, and like it's at 0, it should still go back to exactly the way we start. But now when we smile, the smile still looks good, and now the frown looks better. So now we have a smile and a frown. So let's just say that's one setting there. And then, yeah, so this always gets a little twitchy here. We'll have to see how well we can do it. I'm going to save it as model rig 2. I'm going to try and mirror that setting to the other side. And let's do that via the character manager vamp. I think it's vamp. So we're going to click on vamp. What do we want to do with vamp? I want... Do we use the tag or the model? Okay, I'm going to grab the pose morph. Hopefully it works with pose morph. So pose morph is the source. It's also the target. What are we transferring? I'm transferring morphs. Okay, cool. We're transferring morphs. Evaluation mode near surface, that's fine. Transform space, that does matter. We want to flip on X. So I'm going to say transform flip X. Local is fine. Let's try it. Transfer maps. Cool. Let's go back into our morph tag, and you'll see that there's 2 smiles now. Let's go to animate. And it totally worked. Look at that. So what we just did is we just we had the morph, and we just mirrored it from one side to the other. So you actually don't want to do that step until you've kind of done all the morphs on one side. And now, keep in mind, we only just did one morph. We could add as many of those as we want to. So I could, right-click and actually, how do we make a new one? Oh, just add pose. So I add a new pose. You see it blanks out. And here, maybe, here we do a completely different kind of motion. Let's do a loop selection. I'm going to do a loop selection right there. I'm going to grow my selection. and I'm going to have the entire thing move up a little. I'm going to grow my selection. I'm going to have the entire thing move up a little. And then that's it. That's what this is. And I'm just going to call this mouth up, down, and then go back to animate. So now I've got another slider. I've got a slider that can move my mouth up and down. So like now, like already think of the expression we can start getting. So here's where we're kind of at default. But now when we go to smile, so it goes up on one side, and maybe you're doing a quirky like Han Solo smile, so you pull the other side down a little bit. And then the entire mouth can travel upwards a little bit. Or you make a different slider and travels left and right. You grab another one that just grabs the middle of the mouth and opens. You can make an entire pose where the mouth is open. Although I tend to make my mouth opening and closing based off of a joint, based off of doing some proper like bones and joints rigging to make that move. But anyway, I mean, now we've got a rig. We've got a rig where this guy can start moving around and prepare. So this is the simplified version of doing some facial morphs and whatnot. So that was mirroring it from one side to the other, doing all these things. What's great is the base mesh is still, you don't want to start adding points and getting rid of points, but like you can go and change your base mesh still entirely. You know, like let's say you're working on your character and like he's supposed to be like this weird sad person. He's always kind of like down in the dumps. So can't get a good selection here. UL loop, stop at boundary edges. Nope, still not working. How do I do this? I'm just going to go to the front, and I'm just going to do a selection. But anyway, let's say you got like some sad butler character. I'm going to do that selection right there. So you see I've grabbed that. I'm going to say UF, grab all this. So you got a sad butler, and he's, his face is down here, and he's like, yes, Master James, blah, 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 blah. And then so he does that. Oops. I hit undo. Do we actually have to go? I might actually have to be in the base mesh and then make those changes here. So I'm going to hit undo, hopefully get my selection back. Go back to base pose and say, okay, so, and then do that. And then now that's in the base pose I put that. But now that I went and made more changes to the base mesh, all I did was move points. I didn't add or subtract. But now he can, now his face is now changed and morphed down there. So you can actually make one character do all the facial animation and then do a bunch of morphs and changes after that and do more changes. So you can be like, blah, 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 blah. So we're not going to talk about the interactive tag because I don't even remember how to do it because I haven't done it since it came out. But the interaction tag can make it so you can make like a polygon selection. And now when you click that polygon selection and drag it, it will actually control the slider. We didn't even get to do it. Should I do it? I mean, this one's kind of neat. We haven't actually spent that much time on it, which is kind of shocking. So why don't we do one more thing? I'm going to go ahead and go to edit and delete half of the smile because we're going to be mirroring it again. But let's kind of stretch our mouth out a little bit here. We might even do a tiny little bit of espresso. I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to add a new pose, and I'm going to call this one in/out. And I guess it's the right side of the face, or it's at the left of his face. So I'm going to say left. This one should even be smile left. So, okay, I'm going to edit in and out. So what is in and out going to be? Well, in and out is just going to be really simple. I'm going to grab these points and polys. Got to be very careful about not selecting these ones behind you. See, I did accidentally have some. And I'm going to pull it out. And I'm going to maybe, let's make sure I'm not selecting through the model. I'm going to grab these. And let's pull out a little bit more. Let's so it's stretching all that out pretty well. But now I'm going to maybe convert this to points and shrink. Now I'm just grabbing these few points in there and pull that even further. So that gets kind of tight on the outside. So that pushes out. But now, of course, you know that when we go back here, this is out and in. So I can grab the slider and pull out, but I can also pull in. Okay. So now, well, why don't we go ahead and mirror it again? It's not bad to recap. Character, manager, vamp, morph tag to morph tag, morphs, mirror on X, go. And it actually automatically matched the slider as well. We'd actually want to go in there, and actually it's a good idea to go in here, and we've got our left and right. Is that, okay, that is left and right, so we want to go down here and make sure that we rename these right and right. Okay, because it's just important to keep kind of track of those. We can also change the order of them and whatnot. But now here's where things get really fun. And then when I'm doing a basic rig and not doing an advanced interaction tag based one, what I do is I always create spline controls. I love creating spline controls. So what I'm going to do is kind of take the circle, and I would even probably do things a little bit more like set it to none, so it turns into a nice little diamond, and I put it right here. So this is going to become like the mouth control. So this is very important. Right away, I'm going to call it left corner. And what I'm right away going to do is copy that name. I'm going to hit Alt-G, and it puts into a null. And I'm going to rename that null left corner 0. So what that means is if I grab this and move it somewhere else, I can always hit Shift-C, PSR, and it's always going to 0 out. Very important. What's also important is like this object, my left corner mouth, its position is 0, 0, 0. Its rotation is 0, 0, 0. This is very important. If it wasn't in this null, which is in the same place, then it wouldn't be at 0, 0, 0. It would be at 170 and negative 400. But when it's in a null in the same place, it's 0, 0, 0. So what that means, and what is super cool, is we can now go into Espresso. So I'm going to just do the corner of this mouth here. We can put the Espresso can be anywhere, but let's just put it on the... Actually, I guess it should probably be on the model itself, the face. So I'm going to right-click. I'm going to say Espresso. And I'm going to drag in the left corner of my mouth. Control. And there are 2 controls I want from here. I want to output. So what do I want from here? I want to have position, not global position, but position, which is the local position. I want position Y. And I want coordinates position X. Z, we didn't do a Z, we didn't do a depth, so we're not going to do that one. So anyway, we've got those 2 things. And what do we want those to control? Well, we're going to want to drag in our morph tag, and we want those to control. And now rather than clicking and dragging and going to tag and finding all these things, what's a little bit easier is we go here and grab smile left and just drop it where it belongs, and grab mouth in out left. So those are the 2 we want. So excellent, it's working well. Now, almost guaranteed we're going to want a range mapper. Not necessarily, but a range mapper converts kind of one series of numbers to a different set of numbers. My favorite thing in Espresso for sure. But anyway, I'm just going to make them now because, okay, let's not make them now. We'll talk about them in a second. So what do we want to do? I want our position on this little control here, up and down, to control smile, which is up and down. I should have named it up and down. So up and down, position should control up and down, and X should control in and out. Now, these might be backwards, and they might move at a bad speed, but that is as simple as we have to maybe get right there. So now I'm going to grab the left corner of my mouth, and let's pull it up. Whoa, okay. You see, it is, look, as I move this up and down, the mouth is doing things, but it's doing way too much. It's moving way too far. And let's grab X and pull it. Okay, it is also correct, but it's going way too far. This is where the range mappers come in. I'm going to right-click, go New Node, Espresso, Calculate, Range Mapper. And we're going to take one. I'm going to make a duplicate of it. So we got 2. Just hold down Command. So Command or Control, and it'll make a duplicate. I'm going to feed these into there. And it's just kind of like I'm putting them on the in-between step. So they have to stop at this Range Mapper before they get to their pose morph. So what's happening, and I can grab both and do it both at the same time because the directions are correct. It's just the speed isn't correct. So let's do it real simple. When we input 1, it's outputting 1. But what I'm going to say is or let's slow it down. So we can slow it down by telling it to output a smaller number, like 0.1. Or we could tell it to input a bigger number, so 10. Let's say 10. So for every 10 units I move it up, it only feeds into the morph tag, 10% of it. So let's see if this is any better. I'm going to click that and drag it up. Okay, it's nowhere near as crazy. It's still too much, but it's nowhere near as crazy. So let's go back into a range mapper, and I'm just going to guess 30. So for every 30, it's going to do. Now, look at that. This is almost a 1-to-1, and we actually don't need it to be perfect. It's still maybe a little much, so maybe we could put 40 in. So now you see it's actually tracking almost perfectly. It's actually kind of irrelevant. It doesn't have to match. Like, I could put in 400 here, and now as I drag this large amount, it only goes a little bit. But now it's kind of visually, it's a little bit easier. Maybe it's easier to get detailed work. Kind of 1-to-1 is good, but you don't have to be perfect. So that goes up to up and down, and then this goes left and right. So the left and right is actually a little extreme because I pulled that further. So now I'm going to grab the left and right here. And actually, I didn't even think about it, but visually, like if we kind of pull this, to the right, and you can see how far that's shooting out, I can actually just grab this one bottom node, which is the in and out, which is, the left and right. And I can start dragging this down here. And as I drag it down, you'll actually see it update in the viewport. And I can just drag it right to where it's kind of matching. And now we kind of visually, so for that one, 68 was the correct number. But now, here's what I really want to point out. Now we've kind of got this up and down, left and right. But we can drag both of them at the same time. First of all, let's Shift-C, PSR, goes to 0. I can now grab this and go up and down and left and right at the same time. So now this one control is created like this 360-degree series of options. Like it used to just be up and down, left and right, but you multiply those on top of each other, and we actually can get arcs out of this. We can actually have this arc around and go to any position of in and out, up and down, which is just insane. Like as soon as you combine two axes, it's like, oh my god, look at it, it's amazing. And it's all based on just this object moving up and down. So this is, instead of doing the interactive tag, you can do it like this. We have to set the same thing up on the other side, and the other side might have to be inverted because the directions wouldn't go. At that point, it'd just be repeating myself for what is a kind of a little quick throwaway tutorial. Although there's lots of good info in here, but we're not getting super detailed. This is kind of the techniques without getting into the nitty-gritty. So yeah, that's working great. And I have another spline here, and that would control the left side. We could have another spline. In fact, what I do is probably have a spline that's a parent of this one and that one, and then that spline would control the mouth up down, which actually got mirrored, so we'd actually delete one of those. But the whole mouth could move up and down based on a different spline moving up and down. We have to do the mouth moving left and right as a whole, and that could be controlled via another one. So it can really, really, really just start adding up to the point where you get lots and lots of controls, and you can kind of see like. A lot of character stuff is very daunting, but we just made this from scratch. And look at all of this motion we can get out of it. And if we just did the other side, like think of if we just made it so we could open and close the mouth, do this left side and right side so we get smiles and frowns, like we've got like 90% of the expressions we'd want to be able to do. Now then you can start getting really detailed where you just take a couple of these points and you can move them up and down a little bit and really start getting those nuanced movements. But really, this is it. This is everything covered in what you had linked to on the original mouth thing. I guess there. Like that. This covers all of that. Like all the things I just talked about. You just keep adding on to it, adding more layers, more of those things, and then moving them around, and it just starts turning into keyframing things. So, I mean, I guess the only thing we haven't done is keyframing. So we can go and grab the left corner of the mouth here. So this is the only control that we kind of built outside of it. So everything else we'd have to do in here. But let's just do the left corner. So let's just start out. Let's just do this quickly. Here's what I would actually do. Is all we care about is the position of this. So I'm going to turn off. Here we have position, scale, rotation, and parameters. I don't want parameters. I don't want rotation. I don't want scale. I just want position. And now I'm going to turn on this middle button, which is auto keying. And what that means is every time I move anything, it's going to record position. So now I'm in animation mode. You see we get this nice red outline on our whole viewport. So anyway, you have to make sure you move it every time. But so I'm going to say, okay, at the beginning, it should look like that. Let's fast forward 25 frames. When I'm at frame 25, I want this to maybe move up a little bit. But you know what? It's good to build anticipation in the thing. So I'm going to say back here, we're going to build in some anticipation. So before it goes up, it'll go down a little bit. And now we can jump further, and now he's kind of happy, and then it's going to maybe just move in a little bit. So it doesn't really change much. You'll see that there's not much motion between those two, but it's just kind of like a holding rest, or like, what do you call it? Like a living rest or something like that. There's a lot of terms, but essentially, like, you never want to just die. Like, you want it to ease out. Every parameter should always be moving a little bit. Just keep it alive. Let's move forward. So he kind of held that smile for a while, but now somebody told him something he doesn't like, and he's going to be very sad. And it's going to drop down. But in the same way we kind of anticipated before, why don't we pull this up before we go down? In fact, maybe we can pull up and out a little bit. So now he's going to frown. He's going to be very sad. And now maybe that'll just hold through the rest of the animation. So we want it to be a little alive, so I'll just do a little motion there. So cool. I stop keyframing because it's very dangerous. Because if I went and I grabbed the subpoly or grabbed the subdivision surface and I move it, it'll be recorded. So you got to be very, you're like, I'm in animation mode now, and then you record. But anyway, just quickly threw in some keyframes there, hit play. So he's going to smile, wiggle around, and like, okay, not good animation. Let's hide our polygons here. So that's kind of moving around. He's smiling. It's moving over. Let's smooth that out a little more. These are not very sexy keyframes. But now at that point, what I would do is now we go into our F-curves. F-curves 2 times in one day. So all we're going to worry about is our left corner of our mouth. So if I hit spacebar, is it? Oh, wait, I think they changed it to tab. It used to be spacebar. Now it's tab because spacebar is play. So you hit tab and you can toggle between keyframe mode and F-curve mode. So now you can maybe see where some of the animation problems are happening. Here's our anticipation. Like, that's where it arcs down. But you see, that's a pretty big curve. It's quite sharp. So I can maybe ease that out a little. This curve is kind of sharp. I maybe want to ease that out a little bit. Typically, you don't want to do this blind. You'd want to be making sure that you'd want to make sure that you were seeing the face at the same time. I'm just doing this quickly. There's a lot of auto keyframing stuff happening here. So you see, I'm actually losing a lot of control over the way these are arcing. I'm going to just kind of ignore that for right now. This down dip is a little extreme. We'll pull that up. I'm just kind of smoothing out some of these arcs here, so everything gets a little smoother. You gotta be careful because you go too far and it's gonna start feeling floaty. And here's kind of a really nice a thing. When you're doing character animation, a very, very, very good rule of thumb that I completely agree with is when you're animating. You saw what I did is I was recording key poses. So I was like, okay, I want it to be here. I want it to be here. I want it to be here. Those are key poses. But that's not animation. Animation is what happens between the frames. How does it get from this point to this point? That's where your animation. That's when you're animating, when you're an animator, when you're talking about like that's quality animation. Like this is a nice pose. That is nice animation. I'm not saying that's nice animation. I'm saying that the animation comes in the in-betweens, how these things are arcing around and whatnot. Now, I just did a little bit of smoothing in there, and let's see if it looks any better. So it goes up. That hold is a little weird where it moves left. I'm just kind of arbitrarily grabbing these. It's definitely better. It's smoother. You see how everything feels. It's not so jerky as it was a second ago, but that's moving around. It's moving around okay, but like the way it moves over to the left and whatnot, not very appealing. So like right here, let's see, as this moves up, so that's fine. But then it moves in, and that moving in is a little weird, so I'm gonna pull it back out. And let's move it over here, and it's still kind of in, but now we're moving down, so I might want to arc it around a little bit. Like even getting arcs in here, where it's gonna pull in and then arc down. Even here, like, see how that goes from top to bottom? Well, that's just kind of going straight from the top to the bottom. What if we stop at this midpoint and say at the midpoint, it actually pulled out a little bit? So now it's going to arc down. So you get a little bit of a C curve going here. I mean, if I could, wait, it's not keyframing, so I didn't do it at all. Go to this midpoint and then pull it out a little bit. So you can see it actually arcs down. See how we get that arc? And that's going to be more visually appealing. When you're doing animation, like all these arcs right here, in fact, you can even kind of do it here a little bit. It's bad to do it in between, but you want these to be arcs. You never want there to be like a So by doing these as curves, you see up here, it never stops. It actually does like a figure 8 and then travels down. And over here, that gets a little sharp. If we pull these apart a little bit, we actually get like a little bit of an arc traveling there. Now you got to be careful about like just kind of eyeballing this. What would be a good idea is if I actually scrub to the frame where it's at, it's like, okay, when I move this, I'm actually moving the keyframe visually. But if I were to move that keyframe, I can actually see it happening at that point. So it's a good idea to kind of fast forward to the time you're at in order to manipulate the keyframe you're on. But by having done that, now we're getting arcs. So now all this motion should feel, it's going to feel a lot better. Once again, these are just arbitrary movements, so it's not super great, but hopefully there's some nice hints in there. Stop recording, save the file. So hopefully, that's a little bit of an overview. That was modeling, rigging, pose morphs, espresso, animating, keyframing, cleaning keyframes. So that's almost like a little bit of everything character animation in one time. But I'm going to have to stop that one there. In fact, we're already past 3 o'clock. But that was a very good. Well, I mean, I guess there's a question about it. That's something I made, so I do know about it. I haven't really often gotten to talk about this kind of morphing and rigging and whatnot, so it's kind of fun to go talk about those things. So thanks for the question, and see you another Ask GSG. I actually might segment that out as a YouTube clip because that could be kind of fun.